stays warm.
Good morning, all.
Howdy.
How is everyone?
We're good.
Have a good weekend and all that good stuff.
Yeah, we're just talking about the unusual nice weather.
And now it's gone.
It'll be back. It'll be back. I'm just kind of cleaning up some of my stuff. I got way too much stuff open here.
I think
Crash
Wednesday
your
on.
computer.
So I think Wednesday onwards is going to be nothing but sunshine.
That'd be nice. Now it's just going to get hot as crap.
Not going to be warm though, I don't think.
What's that?
I don't think it's going to be warm though.
Yeah, it may not. I think we got a little bit of winter yet, maybe, hopefully. Okay, so we had a student drop out over the weekend, Ben Goddard. So that leaves Brian to present his today. And then I'm going to talk about some of the other methods that were not discussed a little bit, and we'll move forward. So, Brian, you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm having some issues with my external drive talking to my Chromebook.
Yeah.
So the slideshow came up with an earlier version. So I can still talk about the rest of it, but it doesn't look right.
What do you mean it doesn't look right?
Well, I'm missing 10 slides, and my last slide doesn't have a picture on it.
Oh.
Hey, Brian, you said you have a Chromebook?
Yeah.
Yeah, I initially had issues with mine too, but are you using Microsoft presentation or are you using a Google Doc PowerPoint?
No, I'm using the Google Slides.
Yeah, that's what I used too. I had problems with it too at first. I think what you had to do was like
Shoot.
like
That's my water bottle.
I can't even let it now actually. Well, I do have both Microsoft and Google, but I had to like make the PowerPoint on Microsoft first, and then like I transferred it over to my Google Drive, and then I saved it there and uploaded it and shared it that way.
Yeah, well, I had to transfer it over
Something like
because my PC took a crap on me a few weeks ago.
Well, if nothing else, what can you, when you get to that point, can you just Google some images and talk about those?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you are ready to go.
All right. Hang on, I'm trying to.
So is it raining out in your woods, Eric?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Did it come up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So today we'll be talking about building with straw, which isn't very common around here because it's way too humid to build protection, and you end up spending more on the protection than you spend at all on the straw. So straw it is a byproduct that once, it's basically cereal plant matter that's been stripped of the chaff and all the grains. And so you have this leftover waste that it's mostly used with bedding for livestock and thatch work. So, if you're planting grass, something like that. You throw that down as a protective cover, keeps the birds out of the seed. And then it's really good insulator for animals that live, outdoors and in a barn. Um, it's easy to muck, cleans up quick. After you do the mucking, you can actually transfer it over to a compost pile and reuse that to fertilize. And it's been used as an insulation since recorded history for homes. So straw is one of the most renewable resources that we have. You can grow it pretty much anywhere. Uh, the harvesting, it supports the local farmers and even the big farmers. And it also supports local businesses because farmers need equipment to harvest it, and they also need for it to be repaired. And that's where I worked for a long time with the service and repair of farm equipment. I still do it on the side, but it's kind of a slowing industry right now just because of the economy and COVID. So here in the States, well, North America, there was a boom in straw construction in the Midwest, in the Great Plains, because there's not a lot of timber available in that area. So they would use straw to construct homes, and most of them started out as just temporary shelters because the straw would go bad. Anytime moisture is involved, it actually starts rotting and mildewing from the inside. And I don't know if you've ever smelled like rotten straw or hay. It's probably the worst thing you'll ever encounter. Along with the industrial age, the invention of, diesel, gasoline, and steam engines, the harvesting of straw became much quicker. And so they were able to build more faster. And people realized that the straw would actually makes a great insulation, and they started protecting it with mud, stucco, and those type of materials on the interior and the exterior walls. So currently, straw building is popular in what is called the brown construction movement. And that's a concept of using easily renewable resources to build a home. It's popular because it retains the heat during the colder months and is cooling during the winter. Hang on, let me pull this down here. So when you're talking about R value with straw, it's not as efficient as conventional insulation. It's you have to go with much thicker walls. So most popular is what's called a two-stringer bale, and that's what you're going to find mostly around here in Western North Carolina is a two-stringer, measuring 3 feet by 1.5 feet and 14 inches. And the R rating is actually pretty good. It's an R30 compared to 8-inch high density that offers the same value. You're basically going to lose square footage due to the thickness of walls, but the cost difference is, your 8-inch high density fiber is 45 cents per square foot versus 14 cents for straw per square foot. So the cost of building is around $130 if you're using a contractor or a home builder. But if you do it yourself and you've got friends to help out, it can drop down to $60. Um, Using reclaimed materials such as pallet and, like old barnwood to construct the foundations and the sides, you can build a 20 by 10 house for around 25K. So with the modern construction methods, they are now using, um, vapor barriers that you glue to the bills. They're installing sheetrock wood. They're using recycled, uh, like vinyl plastic siding to protect the straw, which adds way to the cost and is more niche to that, you know, that people who come from money, the new age hippie. That's what they're doing. So whenever you're building with straw, you have to actually put it up off the ground because moisture will seep through the flooring and get into the straw, which causes rot, mildew, and mold. And the mold that usually grows in straw ends up being black mold, and you don't want to have that in your house. You don't want to breathe that one bit. But really, anything that creates a barrier for moisture will work. But the floor and frame are usually made of wood. I've seen some where they've used concrete, but that's pretty rare. All right, so here's where everything gets screwed up. So where else is straw used? It's used as an additive in constructed lumber, so that like the press wood, the composites, it's used in that as a strengthener and a bond. Um, Again, ground cover for growing grass. And there's a mixative called light straw clay, which actually is a better method for this area for construction because they mix clay with the straw. It's moldable into these small balls that you can actually stack and compact along the frame. And it has to be done during like the warmer months and the summer months where we don't get a lot of rain. And you compact it down and you have to let it dry. And then you can smooth that surface and actually just, you can paint over it, stucco, whatever. But once it dries, it becomes a very solid structure. So building with straw, straight straw is not good for Western North Carolina. It's just way too humid here. We get too much rain. The time it takes for you to actually stockpile the straw, and hopefully the straw was stored properly in a dry space in a controlled environment, you run the risk of this straw being rotten or moldy. And it takes time to build these things, and there's got to be some type of protective cover. And every time I've seen it try to be done here, I would visit a farm out in Burnsville, and they were trying to line their barn with the straw covering on the outside, and it had gone rotten. I mean, immediately as I pulled up, because I went out there to work on their tractor, I mean, the smell was just terrible. And they weren't very experienced in doing construction and having to, tell them, like, dude, I know you paid like $22 per bell, but it's got to come down. It's all gone bad. I'm trying to get Google to come up. Okay. Hang on. All right, so here, oh, come on. I can't bring this up without pulling up the website, but this is kind of what you would use to mix your light straw clay in. It's a
Brian, right click on it and then open in a new, hover over the picture and right click. There you go.
Okay. So basically, you would take this cylindrical tube and you mix in your clay with your straw. And there are actual mechanical mixers to do this, but it's cheaper just to use, this this metal cylinder, and you guys just take and you turn it over by hand, you and a few of your friends. That actually, that'll mix it up. And then let's see here.
What's the dry time?
It really depends on how humid it is outside. The dry time for it to completely set is probably 2 weeks.
Ooh, okay.
But still, that's much better than having to deal with the added cost of having to cover the regular straw structure with stucco or wood painted surfaces. Let's see here. Well, that's not very big, but that's kind of what the finished product looks like. I wish I could find a bigger image of it. I had one. Oh, crap. Oh, that was bigger on the other one. All right, so can you guys see what I'm pointing at here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I can't bring it up in a bigger image, but that's basically what the composition looks like. You can see there's definitely a lot of straw and the clay binding everything together. The nice thing about using like this light straw clay is it's moldable. So you don't have to worry about conforming to a strict structure. Like we've been kicking this idea around. We've got this 2 levels in a field that has an 8-foot rock wall that is starting to come apart. And what we're thinking about doing is using light straw clay to build a hobbit hole, to use as kind of like an Airbnb, and covering and using light straw clay to actually make the structure over a thatched lattice, and then building a grade of about 12 degrees down from the 8-foot rock wall to the lower barn, and using the the Hobbit hole as a space filler in the middle, so we don't have to spend as much on fill dirt for each side to make that grade. If that makes sense.
I'm going to take over for just a second. When let me go back up here. Light, straw, clay. So, well, I'm getting a little different pictures than you. So they can basically make bricks out of this stuff.
They can make bricks out of it. It's usually easier to work with it when it's still moist, when it's still a little wet.
So doing it packed walls like this, you're saying is better?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've actually been doing some drawings of the Hobbit hole in the gradescaping, and I'll share that whenever I get more of a solid sketch on it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
That'd be real
What's,
good.
what's the compression strength of that? Will it hold a lot of weight?
Yeah. It'd be just like any other brick structure. It's I didn't look up the actual compression strength, but I know they're strong once they're built. You see a lot of it around here. When, like, say, Cameron was more of a rural community. I mean, now there are hardly any farms left around here. Everything turned into, 3-story, 2-story houses, and they're all packed in together. I'm sitting on one of the few plots out here that still has over an acre and a half, and but next door, whenever it used to be my great grandmother's house before they tore it down, they had a light clay straw structure built to store food in. So they use that as a for food storage for their root vegetables, stuff like that.
How insect resistant is it?
Once it's built and hardened, you do want to paint the surface, or at least cover the surface with something that is, insects can't get through, because I mean it's made of clay and straw, and insects eat straw.
That's what I thought. Can you put rebarb in it? It looks like they did there.
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
So Brian, you mentioned mucking. What did you mean by mucking?
Excuse my French, but cleaning shit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now I'm trying to find.
So that black mold. Oh, so not familiar. If you don't know if you guys are farm smart or not, but when you bale hay or straw, so what's the difference in straw and hay? Straw is generally considered a hollow grass, versus hay is a blade grass. So straw comes from generally like wheat, barley, those kind of grasses, where then you get, just hay that we talk about is from like fescue grass. Also, if we bale it, so we go out there, we're going to cut it, and we're going to turn it. And when let me just.
Yeah, I mean, the straw has really no nutritional value. It's used as a filler if you're going to use it for feed.
Yeah.
Whereas hay actually does have nutritional value. So you're going to find two different types. So if you get down to, the feed and seed, there are going to be two separate sections. Like here's your hay and here's your straw.
Right. Right. So when we're baling the straw, look much like the hay. So cows can eat hay that has been rained on. So if we're baling this and it gets rained on after it's baled, then you can't feed it to horses or goats.
No,
because their stomach cannot take it. They'll get colic and die. But cows can. So the straw works is kind of the same way. If we were to bale the straw and it gets wet, then we can't use it to build a house with. We have to get it, we have to get it picked up and stored in a barn or underneath plastic or something to keep it as 100% dry as we possibly can, so that no mold will grow. Now, like Brian said, rotting straw, I mean, it's got a definite pungent sour smell to it. And the Stachyboccai or Stachybotrys is black mold. It is the deadliest mold in the world. And so we're going to talk about that on Wednesday when we get back into finishing up our building basics, and we're talking about moisture. But when we get into this straw, we definitely want to keep that as pristine as possible so that we get it into this wall and protect it. Now, you had said that we have to put some sort of coating on it. So is that like a stucco generally that's put on there?
Yeah, traditionally it's stucco, but now they're using, if they're building a house and they have the money for it and they're just trying to do that whole brown thing, they'll put up a vapor barrier, they'll use sheetrock. The exterior of the house will be some type of recycled siding, that kind of thing.
Tell me more about this brown movement.
All right, so the brown movement is people trying to use the most renewable resources and the most economical resources in construction and in their daily lives. There's some parts of it I don't really agree with because they're trying to use stuff like straw as a heating fuel, where they're using that in their wood stoves, and it's very heat resistant, and it takes a long time to burn. But once it starts, it's gone. So some of it's, I don't know, some of it doesn't make sense to me. I just started reading into it, but yeah, they're using easily renewable resources to build their houses, to feed their children. You see a lot of these new raised bed gardens that are going on with that because a lot of the soil. Okay. Like I had mine tested, and I have where we used to have a garden. Now it's just there are too many heavy metals in it for me to actually grow down there. So I'm having to do everything in raised beds.
When you say heavy, how did the heavy metals get there?
From a well.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about minerals.
Yeah, minerals.
Yeah, high mineral content. I got you. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Tell us, what are the pros for building with straw?
Well, there's plenty of it. It's cheap. It's obviously very renewable. You can do almost anything with it. Like I said, around here, the light straw clay is really the only building option you're going to have, because the soil here is so saturated with water that if you built something out of conventional straw, even with a covering, as soon as the house settles, you could get a crack in the foundation, a crack in one of the walls, and you're going to have to tear the whole thing down because the hay is going to end up getting, not the hay, the straw is going to end up soaking in moisture and developing that mold in the mildew. But as long as you do the construction correctly, I mean, it's not as itchy as fiberglass, but and you're going to lose a little floor space because of the thickness of the walls. But it's a very more earth friendly way of insulation, in my opinion.
Well, it's a renewable product. I mean, it can be regrown really fast. So,
Oh yeah.
So I would say one of the cons would be it's high maintenance.
It is.
Is that safe to say? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is high maintenance. That's a con. And there's also you can't just think about the price of your straw when you're doing the construction, especially around here, because you got to think about your coverings that's going to have to be put up to keep the mold and rot out. But it is a very green way of doing construction.
Yeah. What about fire? Is it fire? How would it do? I mean, I guess you got enough clay in there if you're using the light straw clay method versus the straw bale. That would be probably a better fire resistance than if you used the straw bale.
Well, yeah, mixing the clay in definitely helps, but straw is actually pretty fire resistant.
Okay.
I mean, you'll see a hayfield catch on fire and just go up, but if it's just an already stripped straw field, it may singe at the edges, but they've actually used that to extinguish fires.
Well, I guess in this case, it's a compact, more dense. I spent one Christmas on a hay fire, on a barn fire, but of course, it was not compact, and it went up like a son of a gun.
Yeah, no, it's like I said. I mean, if you're going to use it, you have to build it right.
Yeah. Anybody else got some questions for Brian? Comments?
Brian, did you see any other sort of framing details that would be, advantageous for use with straw? My only experience with straw was with Timberframe. Timberframe gives you a lot of area to provide a lot of extra insulation.
Yeah, Timberframe definitely is most commonly used. I've also seen them use like interweaving just gathered timber into these lattice works over the frame.
Like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And around here, there's also God, where's it at? We can easily grow bamboo, and there are a lot of bamboo fields that we have in the local area, and that stuff is really resilient and it's very flexible. So you can form basically any type of. I mean, if you wanted to make a dome structure, you could interweave it together to do something like that.
I was thinking about using some of the masonry brick stacking techniques with the straw bale as well. If you could, make something pretty structural just with the straw.
Right.
You're saying use the straw as a supporter for veneer?
Me, I was just thinking about, if I wanted to try to make a straw wall without using any lumber in it, to try to minimize the amount of wood or, increase the amount of R value. I'm just wondering, I think you could probably use a straw bale kind of like you'd use a masonry unit, and, use your interlocking patterns and your,
Like this. You're talking about like a running pattern.
yeah, use a running bond or do some, soldier joints and et cetera, just to make, like the tallest straw bale structure I've ever seen was 3 stories tall, but they did it with timber frame. And it seems like that's a lot to ask. Be a lot to ask of just the straw. I find it interesting to think of ways that we can use just the renewable resources and not try to make it as much like traditional framing as some of these pictures.
Yeah, right.
Can't find it now, but my slideshow had a really good picture of them using fallen timber they had collected without even milling it. They were just, kind of used it to make that lattice structure overhead, and then used logs as supporting frames, and then built from there. And it actually looked really nice once they were finished.
I'm trying to find that and I can't. Getting close, but no cigar.
Eric, can't you run his slideshow like you pull ours up and then he can talk about it?
I don't have any more than he did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess Chromebooks aren't what they're cracked up to be.
So this is another way of mixing clay and the straw, much like what we were talking about in the cob where they were stomping it. But this does it without stomping it. Is that correct?
No, I'm trying to see it. Hang on. Let me switch back over. Right. Yeah.
Using the tumbler.
Yeah. That's how using the tumbler. And so what's nice about that method is you're using only manpower instead of actually having to spend money on a gas engine to power it.
How much does this have to be turned? Do you
It
have
really
any?
depends on how much you're mixing into it, but I mean, you're going to be turning it at least probably 20, 30 times to get a mixture going. And at the same time that you're turning, you're having to constantly hit it back with a shovel or a rake.
Right.
To consistency right.
Wonder about something. Wait a minute, I think I may have seen it there. So this is different recipes for that. So it does give you slightly more R value per inch than wood. It appears. Wood is 1.25 per inch. So that is very interesting.
Yeah, I base mine off of, okay, so per inch, you're looking at an R value of 2.38, and using the 2-stringer, that's where I came up with, that's where they come up with the value of R30.
Okay. Tell me more about this 2-stringer method.
Well, 2-stringer is the standard size hay bale. It's 36 inches by 18 by 14.
Gotcha.
Other than that, they have another one called a 3-stringer, which is a little over 4 feet by 2 feet high and about 2 feet across.
So you're actually talking about the number of strings.
Yeah, that's the numbers.
Okay, I was thinking that. So you're talking about how many strings there are across this. This is a 2-stringer.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I understand. When you were talking about that, I was thinking maybe they were 2 rows of this going in.
Yeah, no.
I'm with you. Okay, a 2-stringer has 2 strings. Gotcha. And you said there was another one that has how many?
3.
So that would be a 3-stringer.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then
So-
after that, you get into the round bells. And
The round bells just are not used, I'm assuming.
no, not usually. I mean, unless now a round bell is going to be better for clay construction because a round bell, when compared to a 2-stringer or a 3-stringer, is going to end up being cheaper in the long run
Hmm.
because you can pick up a round bell for around $50.
And how much are the 2-stringers?
2-stringers, I mean, it depends on where you actually buy it from someone who produces hay or you pick it up from like a feed and seed. So you're talking anywhere from 15 to probably 20.
Okay.
So
Just
it makes
out-
more sense because you get like with your like say a 4x4 round bell, you're getting 11 to 1,200 pounds of straw as compared to a 2-stringer where you're getting like maybe 25.
Gotcha.
Are you talking about an individual 2-stringer bale of straw?
Well, yeah, I mean, some places like I was able to go pick up a bale of straw when it was in heavy production for $9 because that's what I used to reline my backyard when I had to put grass down because my dog's an idiot.
I was gonna say I don't know about anywhere else, but at Lowe's, yeah, there it is right there. We sell them 1 bale of wheat, which I think covers like it says 80 square feet. Yeah, you get it for like $7 or $8.
Did you come across anybody using any pine needles? Was that something that would, I don't guess it would probably work the same, but I'm just curious.
No,
don't
not
know.
really.
People buy that a lot.
Well, I mean, pine needles work well. I used to when I was working at Israel and Sons Garden Center. We sold a ton of pine needles, but they used it as ground cover. Um, that stuff's actually pretty flammable.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's got sap in it, so yeah, I can understand that. One thing, you're talking about ground cover, the pine needles, if you've ever looked, very, very little ever grows under a pine tree. Mostly because of the sap and so forth. But I've noticed that you put this down on a bed, it doesn't rot quite as fast as straw will. And again, very little will grow through this stuff. So it seems to cut down. But I just wondered, I was just curious if, using it for a house, but you say if it's very flammable, then that would not be a cool thing.
No, yeah.
Pine baling is a multi-million-dollar industry in my home county. I mean,
Where's that?
yeah, Moore County, you got Pinehurst, Southern Pines, Pinehurst, Pine Bluff.
Oh,
Western.
okay.
So you go there if you want pine straw, they ship it everywhere because there's plentiful.
Well, I know we would get it in by a tractor trailer load, and we had to keep a close eye on it because it retains heat so well that you had to worry about whether something would happen and you lose the whole thing.
Spontaneous combustion.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right.
Well, we had the same problem with the whiskey barrels we bought because people like to use those as planters, but they still had enough residual alcohol in them that they had a tendency to set themselves on fire too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Any last questions for Brian? Any last comments?
Yeah, I was curious, how flammable is the light clay hay? How flammable does that end up being once it's finished and then installed?
Well, once straw itself is already flame resistant to a point, but once you mix in the clay, I mean, you're really dealing with basically a brick. So you don't really, there's no real concern about it being that flammable at that point.
Cool, thanks.
Okay.
I'm definitely no expert on this. I've only helped do this twice, but I'm trying to do something I have some experience in.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad share your experience with us for sure. If you're interested in something like this, you might want to pick Heath Moody's brain. He worked on or built or lived in, I can't remember. He's done quite a bit in I think his was a straw bale structure up in Boone. So I've sat down and talked with him a little bit about that from time to time. But if you're more interested in that, you may want to talk with him further on that. Okay, thank you, Brian.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so in the alternative buildings, I wanted to talk a little bit further about some of these. I've got them highlighted: ICF, log, CNC homes, Timberframe. So let me just start with Timberframe homes, since that's what we were last talking about that. So when I was in business, I was a log home, Timberframe home builder. And Timberframe home, it's been around for a very long time, even though the joinery may not have been 100%, accurate. So, when you look at these structures here, there are no nails or screws in these structures. They're all held together with pegs. The pegs generally were made from very dense woods like dogwood. We would have used dogwood here in North America, or boxwood, even, what we think about as a hedge. Boxwood is very, very hard, and the pegs go in and hold these structures together. And so if you wanted to build something like this today, it is a structural nightmare, because you're going to have to get a structural engineer involved that's going to know how to run the numbers and everything to prove that it can be done. I usually had a pre package deal that a company had already done, and basically all the drawings and everything, and we just put it together. I have done some different types of joinery just on my own. I built a house, or I redone a house. Let me hang on just a minute. I got a timber. I would do all these cool different timber frame scarf joints and so forth, and they're fun to work. They are hilarious to see some of the people think, oh, this ain't gonna work. Yes, it will work. And so this is a Norwegian wedge scarf that uses a peg to lock these in together. And so I did this for a house that I did not want to have a post. And that was one of the big criterias of that. And so I had an engineer go over the scarf, and yes, he assured me that it would be just as strong as the wood around it. But the building inspector at the time, he was old school and he wanted to see it. So basically I done a scarf joint very much like this, except the top of it was a little bit different. And so it was a little bit more complex, and it was hard as crap to get together. So come on, I got too many things open.
What's usually the tolerance for joints like that? 1/16 of an inch or 32nd? What?
16th if you're good, yeah. 32nd if you're really, really good. So in this particular case, I used a scarf that and I always have a hard time going back and thinking about how this thing is drawn. It's like that, but one more.
Are the scarf joints used to extend the length?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it was much like that, except I had done a little different joint so that, you know, once this peg is put in, and I'm still not drawing this thing correctly, because when the peg goes in, it pushes it apart and locks it together. Let me draw it out two-dimensional. Maybe I can. I don't know why I'm all of a sudden having a hard time with this stupid thing. I believe that's it. So you put a ledge in here and it basically pushes these two apart and locks them together. But then I had this on there as well. And so it's not something that you could just, you know, take a saw to. You're going to have to get a chisel and work it and work it and work it and work it, fit them together, take them apart, and fit it some more. And, you know, until you get it right. It is very time consuming. And so a lot of these that I'm showing you pictures of here, these are probably done with a CNC router. That seems to be the way to go nowadays. Packages such as Hearthstone, and I'm going to talk about Hearthstone some more. Hearthstone Log Homes out of Newport, Tennessee. I used to take a group up there every year and we would tour the facility, and they were really good about it. There we go, Timberframe. But they have extremely expensive freaking German CNC equipment, and all of this stuff is cut with a CNC router, and it is just phenomenal to watch these machines go to it to cut this out. I mean, basically, it's kind of like just throwing a piece of wood into a machine, and it just takes over and does everything for you. You know, really there's no craftsmanship left to, you know, except for putting it together. It's just crazy at how these things are built and cut. And so, you know, even to get this is not bent. This is out of a piece of wood, a straight piece of wood. So you have a lot of waste in a timber frame house, but they're absolutely gorgeous. You know, they've got that that nice warmth to them, and just, I mean, it's just crazy at some of the stuff that you can do with these. And again, they're beautiful, beautiful homes. I use a timber frame along with a log design, and so, you know, you can do that. It's just endless at the amount of stuff that you can do with these. And even stuff like this, you know, this little curve here, what's the purpose of that? It basically gets rid of some weight. Your strength lies basically here in this, where you've got a compression or a tension. This works in both compression and tension, depending on where your forces are being played there. And it gives the post an extension as well for weight, so that you don't have so much free span there. So dealing with free span on the code, you know that you're limited with certain things. Now, this, like anything else, this is non-traditional building. Back in the 18th century and the 19th century, this was common practice, especially in England or just Europe in general. And so that was, you know, if you tried to build a stud 2x4 stud wall, they'd look at you funny and ask questions. So that's what's happening today, is the building inspectors and the code does not really address a timber frame log home, so they consider them non-traditional building. And you have to basically stand on your ear to try to prove to them that it is a suitable building practice, where it's been around very much longer than the 2x4 stud type build. And so a lot of different things can be used to, sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. A lot of different methods were used to do the exterior finishes on them. So you could build these timber frames and then do something in the side of it. And at the time when I was building, Homosote board was a big thing. And I don't even know if you can get it anymore. Well, I guess you can. There it is, Homosote board. This is not what I was looking for. Homosote board at the time was actually like a SIP panel before SIPs came out. And that's not what I'm looking for either. Let me just do SIP. So Homosote is an actual brand name. And so we would use SIP construction panels. We would use, boards similar to this that was made by the Homosote company and fill in between these places where we had, solid insulation. Now it was a pain in the butt to cut some of these things to get this Homosote to work out great. But in the end, you would end up with a very beautiful product with the inside that would look something very much like this. And it's very cool to do. And it's something that I enjoy doing. I just love to get a big old piece of wood and a chisel sometimes and just start playing with it. It's very therapeutic to do stuff like that. So I love it. I just love it. And you end up with that warm, rich appearance, and it adds increased amount of value to your house as well. Even if you did fake beams. I did a house once that we had, the house could stand by itself, but then she wanted this look. So we went through here and done basically fake beams through here and made it look really nice. It was an existing house that we had went back and had renovated. So
Pound for pound, is it as strong as steel?
say it again.
Pound for pound, is it as strong as steel?
Probably pound per pound, yes, I would say so. But what would be an advantage here that is not for metal?
Got to worry about rust.
Okay, rust. Somewhere there's a picture.
Well, you can drill into wood. You don't drill into steel, not without special tools. Oh, I had another question too.
As I was here's that right there explains it all. So this is a steel beam that has reached its maximum temperature and has melted over a wood beam. And I've seen this personally. I was a fireman with the Salem Fire Department when Salem Elementary or Salem Junior High School exploded back in the 80s. And we had steel beams that were melted over and still hanging over a wood beam. So the wood beam is large enough that it can sustain itself through flash fires. So this fire at Salem was a fire that was started by LP gas. What had happened is they had this used to be the high school before the high schools were made, and it was a 3-story building. It was a 3-story building, and it had a basement. in it. The basement was the cafeteria. On the top level up here was the science lab, and that's where the little gas burners were. So we had LP gas up here. The tanks were held outside. And so the buses used to go through here to pick up the kids. And some kid had turned this had not been used in 10 years because it was no longer high school. It was a middle school, and they didn't use the science labs as they used to in the high school. So what had happened was some kid was playing with this down here, turned the gas on, which of course these were all probably open anyway because everybody knew that they didn't work. And that gas had went all the way down because it's heavier than air, went all the way down here to the kitchen where the stove was a gas stove, and it had a nice little pilot light down here. And by the time it hit that pilot light, this entire building was filled full of gas. So you can imagine what happened. It wasn't a boom, it was a kaboom. And we ended up finding a lot of the metal just absolutely melted over top of the wood beams because of that flash point. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that, that I push timber frame, versus steel because of that burn. Because it's not, you just can't just burn right through that in a heartbeat. It takes a while, but once a piece of steel reaches its melting temperature, it's a done deal. Gone, shot.
Like butter.
Like
Was
butter.
anybody in that building?
What's that?
Was anybody in that building when it happened?
No, fortunately there was not anybody, but remember I told you that there was a little road, there's a road through here that the buses went through and picked up kids. Just on the other side of this was the gymnasium, and there was a basketball game going on at the time when it exploded. So most everybody that was in this building ended up with some sort of glass injury because the front of this was just nothing but glass. And when this building exploded, all of this glass, I'm trying to say the stadium, the seats, doggone it, were over here on the other side. So all of this glass went straight to them. They had quite a few injuries because of the glass.
Ouch.
Yeah, and there was actually cars parked half a mile away with glass impregnated in their paint.
I'll have to look the story up.
Salem Junior High School explosion in 80. I might have been 1980. I don't know, but 30th anniversary of the high school explosion. So yeah, look it up. They've got some pictures and stuff, and it was pretty cool. This is not it. None of these are it. So actually, that's it right there. No, it's not either. Anyway, yeah, look it up if you want to on your own. Be cool. Any questions about Timberframe? This is a really cool site here that has a whole bunch of different, basically somebody had just drawn up all of these little scarves and joints and stuff in there. They are absolutely beautiful. And just goes on and on and on and on and on.
TimberframeHQ.com. Builders inspectors, it surprised me. They have to go to school and get certified like every other industry. They got to be taught history. Why in the hell wouldn't they know this is our ancestor or past stuff? Why they act like it's weird?
Well, they're taught code. They're taught code. Okay, they're not taught history. They're taught code. If it's in the code book, it's law. If it's not in the code book, you hire an engineer. It's that simple.
Damn.
Yep.
That's messed up.
Yep. Okay, so while we're still on this, let's see. Did I lose that? Yes, I did.
All of this timber frame architecture reminds me a lot of Germany because they have a huge wood resource there. And most of the homes, I mean, this is how they're built.
Yeah. Actually, it goes back to Viking technology, believe it or not. Vikings were
Shipbuilders.
shipbuilders. So, the scarf joint is used quite extensively in the building of those ships and stuff. And so, when their reign of terror was over with, they had to become farmers. Basically, they couldn't go out and pillage. So to kind of give you a real quick and dirty Viking history, and you ought to look up if you haven't seen the series Vikings on the History Channel, watch it. Man, it is good. Now it's it's a little raw, but it's a good series, and it kind of shows you historically correct stuff on there. So it's it talks about clans and how they made their living. They made their living by stealing. They weren't farmers or anything. And so when one of the clans broke off and decided to move to Iceland, then they started really having to get into using resources that they had around them and not trying to invade England and Germany and Russia and all of that. So for a long time, that is how they made their living, was invading the Western countries, Russia and Germany, and then they decided, hey, let's go east and invade England. And they found out that England had a lot more valuables, and France as well. And so they had to build boats to get there. And so that's where their construction sense really came to a head. But after England became strong and kicked their ass, then they had to go back to farming. And so their barns, you've heard of a cantilevered barn. And if you haven't been to Cades Cove, go to Cades Cove. They have some of the most beautiful barns, and this is one of them in Cades Cove. That's not what I wanted to do. Come on. What's that?
Did the Vikings predate the Romans? I don't remember.
No. Romans came first.
Okay.
Yeah, the Vikings at somewhere around 1400, something like that.
Okay.
Romans were, AD, BC AD time.
Okay.
So this is a cantilevered barn. This is one beam that is holding this on over here. And the reason that the cantilevered is there was a couple of reasons. Obviously, in Scandinavia, their winters were hell. So not only could they put their tools in here, but their cattle could get in here. They had their hay storages up here, and they could just toss it right down into an open space where their cattle could eat and be covered. They didn't have to go out there and shovel snow and this and that and the other thing. But what I was wanting to say was this is a single beam. It's kind of hard I'm too shaky to draw. But if you look, the distance here and the distance here, are quite a bit different. This actually, once it leaves this point here, it starts tapering upward. And that's due to weight. They keep the weight down. The further you get out, the less you're holding up, and you don't have to try to hold this. You don't need as much thick board over here to hold that barn up. But so there's two actual cantilevered barns in Cades Cove. This is the other one. This one is at the trying to think what it's called. It's the homestead. There's a homestead out there that near the visitor center. If you ever go out to the visitor center, this is there. The grist mill is what I'm trying to think of. The grist mill at Cades Cove. And this uses the same principle, and you can see that log coming out. Don't worry about this. This is not structural. It's just there that they covered it up so they wouldn't get any air in here or something. You could put a hog in the center section here, and then you had plenty of room for your increments or cattle to get up under here during the wintertime. In case it snowed, and then that way these are open. These each side here. That one little thing there is driving me nuts. These are open, and they can just throw the hay down here in the center, and then the cattle can eat from there. Or they can put them in these. They can throw them in here, and it keeps it up off of the ground. The cattle can still get to the hay here, but they're not tromping over it and making it bad. So. There you go. There's and this is a direct descendant from a Norwegian barn. So
It looks like a ship almost.
what's that?
It looks almost like a ship.
Yeah, I can see that. But definitely, using timber frame techniques to put this together for sure. If you ever get a chance, go out there and take a look at it. It's cool. Cades Cove in general is cool. I would suggest going in the off season. This one is at Cherokee. This is at the Oconaluftee Homestead Village in Cherokee. It's just absolute awe. And think that they did not have any gasoline or electrical equipment. They didn't have any cranes. They didn't have any lifts, nothing when they built these. This was all hand, lose a finger, lose an eye, get on with it. There ain't no damn such thing as OSHA. Survival of the fittest, basically, is what this is. So it is, it's a dying art, and it's something that I've studied for years. And I do like the fact that they're actually turning these barns into houses and saving them. Matter of fact, my sister, God rest her soul, she had a barn near her home that was renovated, and I got to take a tour of that. And it just so happened that it was a cantilevered barn. It was built by she lives in Pennsylvania, so it was built by the Pennsylvania Dutch, and which is a German descendant. And was cantilevered, gorgeous. Played hell with the building inspector, trying to let them use it in, as a house. Had to get a structural engineer involved, and the structural engineer came on site and pretty much just laughed at the building inspector. Is like, damn, it's been up here this long, where's it going to go now? So that kind of thing. But that is Timberframe, so definitely look over the Timberframe XQ site. It's really cool. And again, like I say, it's very therapeutic, super therapeutic, just, to get in here and start working with two great big pieces of wood. If you haven't already, we actually, let's see.
How much more expensive than regular construction is it?
Well, if you decide to do this, I'd suggest you do it yourself instead. I mean, it's going to be twice the cost.
Okay.
That's not what I wanted.
I have friends in Flat Rock that have a house built that way, and first time I was in it, I was oohing and ahhing with the pegs, and it's like, it's beautiful, and the energy in there is just awesome.
Well, people in Flat Rock have money to do stuff like that too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the forest pod that is down behind the maintenance shed on AB Tech property that it runs around the AB Trek trail. And so my construction 3 students last year, 2 years ago, built this, and there are no nails, no screws in this truss here. It is totally all mortise and tendon and pegs, and they absolutely enjoyed this. These other rafters back here, they are pegged at the top and then screwed in directly across the, down to the wall. But there is no center beam. There's no ridge beam running across through here. And let's see, is there an inside picture? Yeah, there's an inside picture of those beams coming up, and they like I say, they are mortise and tendon joint here with a peg in that, and they are self-supporting. They hold themselves. We actually had this broke into sometime over the year. I don't know when it was broke into, but so we're back. Construction 3 is going to be back working on this semester, and hopefully we can get it completed.
Was it 8 by 10?
This is 8 by 8, but this is 8 by 10. So there's like a 2-foot porch on it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just 8 by 8. And it's just going to be for a study room. You can go to the library and check out the keys and go down here and do your work and stuff. That might be something for you. Get out of the classroom a little bit. And there will be Wi-Fi accessibility here as well. So go back to Hearthstone log homes again. And the only reason that I use this because they got a really nice gallery. So log homes is a huge industry. And at one time, it played a huge part in the history of the United States. So we had log homes, that see, they always throw up these beautiful little things. Log home history. See that. Yeah, there we go. So this played a huge part in building America. So we came to the new land, and hopefully if we were going to survive, then we had to get here, get some trees cut down, build us a house before winter set in. And so this is typically what we ended up with. So we had to get here and get it up very fast before the winter set in. You got to remember that not a whole lot of people, and I don't know why, not a whole lot of people, when they came to the New World, they settled in the South. Most of them settled in the North. New York was it was Delaware, New York was the center hubbub of arriving immigrants. And so it's colder than crap up there. And so we got to get this house built really quick. So these 2 houses here have wooden chimneys. And the reason that they have wooden chimneys is we had to get this thing up in a hurry. So we get here, we build this house with a wooden chimney. We take creek mud and we just absolutely coat the inside of this thing. And we hope and pray that this will last us the entire winter. Now, most did. And if they did, then once they had once they had got through that first year, then the chimney would be torn down, and over the next summer, a new chimney would be erected made of stone. If you were a crappy, fast, didn't give a flip builder, and you were in a hurry, you didn't coat the inside of this chimney really good with creek mud, you lost the whole house. So you were just spinning your wheels, and you did a crappy job. You were lazy, and you probably didn't survive. If anybody's lived up north, you know that it's brutal up there. So hey, we know Texas is brutal, but not very many of these wooden chimneys still remain. Again, because generally after the first season, after the first winter, then they would tear these down and put them back with stone. If someone was really a good, maintenance person, they may have kept the wood chimney if it was built very well, and then they would have kept it caulked, I guess you could say, plastered on the inside so that it did not burn down and would last year after year after year after year. There are several in North Carolina. I couldn't put my finger on either one of them that have a wooden chimney, but I have seen some in North Carolina that have wooden chimney. Out west, shorter, faster one-room houses. A lot of these would have been one room. So it's basically just get here and let's see, have us a place to keep us out of the elements, keep us warm at night, place to cook. Most of the cooking was done outside anyway, and then, move on. As time went on, this may turn into the kitchen, and we would build a living quarters, and then once we done that, then we would keep that separate, as in this. Here's the kitchen. Here's the living quarters. Why do we keep it separate? Well, because the kitchen is used year round. All right, so that means that we've got a fire going on in this year round. And the chances of this burning down were higher than where we only had a fireplace that was used in the wintertime. And if we lost the kitchen, so be it. But we didn't lose the entire house. We didn't lose the entire everything. And I was trying to think, there is another one in Cades Cove, and I can't remember the darn name of it, that is separate, that is a little different. That one? That's not in Cades. Yeah, it is. That's it. Yeah. The Elijah Oliver place. So again, this is the kitchen. This is the spring house, the kitchen, and then the living quarters here. You definitely, if you haven't, you need to go to Cades Cove and just, ride your bicycle around the 11-mile route. In the wintertime, off season, October to May, maybe, or April, the road is closed in the summer, it's closed on Saturday morning and Wednesday morning. You can ride your bicycle through the 11-mile loop without car, and that starts at 6. It opens up at 6 and lasts until 11 o'clock, and then they open up to cars.
How far is it from Asheville?
3 hours. It's Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Oh,
yeah. So the modern log homes that we have today, they are, again, these are all cut with machinery, not by hand. And then they take them out back, and some poor sap takes a foot-as and makes these little marks in it. What is a foot-as? A foot-as is a way of, just making a balk, which is taking a tree and making it into a semi-square log. So if you're very proficient with this, and there's several different types of as, these are all for different purposes. When I was building log homes, I had a hammer that I would basically sharpen the claw on it, and I had me an as there. But a foot as is just longer. The handle is crooked, as you can see here, that so that you get this circular motion on here, so that you just take off a little bit of the meat, and you can basically make it look very nice. And so that's what happens here. Like I say, some poor fella is in the back shed going at it with these just to make it look pretty. This is the Bob Timberlake type log home, and let me give you some examples of that right quick. So in log homes, there's tons of different styles. You have the round logs, and you could have a button pass. And then you have, and what I mean by button pass, this log here butts up to this one, this passes over. And then you have what is called a cove or a seat cove. So the log on top is coved out underneath it, sets right directly on the other log. A lot of the logs that we had that I was showing you historically, they were not button pass, but just pass. In other words, they didn't have a log in here that would come in. They would just stick them on top of each other like this, and then fill this full of mud, creek mud with, well, pretty much like what Brian was talking about, that, that straw and mud mixture that was added up in there. And we call it chinking. And so chinking was a method that allowed a substance to be put in through here so that if these expand and contract, then you wouldn't have a problem that you might have here. And so, but we didn't have the technology that we do today. And most of this material that was put in here was a rigid material. Well, logs are a dynamic material, meaning that they move all the time. So it was a constant battle trying to keep this patched up where it wouldn't leak. So that was one drawback of this. It is a log home is highly maintenance. If even when you do it in the best methods, because of the way it's done. So then we started doing a method like this, where the logs were actually, this is where the dovetail actually gets its name. So it went back to round about here. This would be in a dovetail shape as well. And then we would just continue setting our timbers on top of the next one. And so that's but this is not a very pretty looking log. And we had problems because, remember, I told you about those annular rings in here. Those annular rings are more dense, and they would hold water, and you end up with rot on those, and they would rot out and cause a problem. Another method is the modern day dovetail, which is similar to this. And sure that I'm doing this correctly. Yes, I am. So the weight of this log pushing down on top of it actually pulls this log inward and making a tighter fit. And then, of course, the weight of all of these coming down, we're going to do the same thing with these opposing logs, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So it's very scientific, even though we didn't think of it at the time being scientific. And this is also considered a dovetail type corner, and but it's a little bit more sophisticated than this. And hopefully we can end up shedding off some of this water because we're using a whole log, and the annular rings are going to be somewhat like this on that log. Give you an idea, this is something that that we actually did when I was in business. We, I don't know if it's there. Let me go to Facebook. I know it's in Facebook. Basically, we bought 8x10 logs and cut them ourselves with a chainsaw. It took a little bit of practice to get it, but it's doable. But you end up with a very beautiful look. And so these are all cut with just a chainsaw, no pattern, or well, we did have a pattern, but it's basically, we just draw it out on the end of it with a pencil and start whacking at it with a chainsaw. We used electric chainsaws, which did not have as much kick. And you'll notice that we did use the chinking method. The technology that we have today on the chinking is a latex sand method chinking, which can expand and contract almost up to 2 inches without tearing. So anytime any movement went through these logs, then we didn't have a problem with these tearing out. One thing also to note, when this type of log is used, any type of log really nowadays, there is and I'm going to draw this simply so I can just show you a better picture. I'm not going to put the dovetail in there. Basically, there is a bolt that goes in here. Let's change colors on that. There's a bolt that goes in and holds the next one to it. And so this goes all the way up through there, and we put bolts every so often to hold everything together. Well, what happens is these will shrink. All of these will shrink. And so this has to take place we need to keep pressure on these. So what we would do is we take this huge spring, and then we'd have the bolt, the screw going down in there. And when the log would shrink, then this spring kept tension on the top of the log at all times. Something else that we have to really take place and think about when working with log homes is that shrinkage. And so let's think about this. An 8x10 log can shrink as much as 25, or excuse me, they can shrink as much as 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. So let's say if we've got a 10-foot high, no, let's say we've got an 8-foot high wall. So 8 of these logs, and they all shrink 1/8 of an inch, then through the entire length of that wall, it has shrunk an entire inch. All right, so 1/8 at each one of them. So this whole wall has shrunk 1 inch. Well, what's the problem with that? It's not a problem. Well, it can be a problem. So when we put the second floor on, the second floor actually sets into this wall. And then generally we'll put a post in the middle of it somewhere. There might be a girder that was used, and then a post that goes down here. All right, so when we're thinking about wood, here is the annular rings running around here and on here. But on this post, they run up and down. So that does not shrink. It does not move whatsoever. So if this is going to fall anywhere from 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch each, so that means that could be anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inch total fall. After a year, our floor could look like that. So one of the things that we had to do was we would cut the post shorter, and we had a jack that was put up into a drilled hole in the bottom of this thing. And after a year, and we would cover this would be covered with some sort of base molding. And then after a year, we come back, we take off the base molding, and we lower this post so that this floor comes back to level as best we could. And then, of course, these were installed again, and we left. Generally, this would all take place within the first heating season of the house. So, you know, most of the time when people build a log home, they have a wood stove in there. And that wood stove is going to suck every bit of moisture out of all of these homes. And that can be problematic if, you know, methods are not used to allow for the movement, or in the case of the posts, unmovement. So that gives you an idea of, you know, log homes. And there's a bunch of things that you can do with log homes that I've never seen that before, but that looks cool. So, you know, these can get very, very exotic, especially, you know, if we go to, you know, if we go back to here. Now, these are Western style log homes with the bigger logs because they have the lodgepole pines out there that, you know, grow much bigger than the ones we do here, and they can increase these. Something to talk about here, kind of off on a tangent here. See how they've put these trees in there, and they've just left them looking, you know, with the tree. What am I trying to say? The butt of the tree, you know, they haven't made it any different. You know, it looks like the tree. Well, in the old Greek days, you've kind of give you a little history lesson here. In the old days, when people were building a house and they were going to use a post, they would turn the tree upside down because they were fearful that it would start growing again and tear the house down. So people really started getting, you know, very creative with this big tree up here, this big portion of the tree. And we ended up with what we know today as a capitol. And so that is what I'm talking about as a capitol. You've seen those in Greek architecture. And so they would just take this and make it real dainty and pretty. And because they feared that if they put it in this fashion here, they was afraid. It was just, you know, in that time, people were uneducated and they thought the tree would start growing again and tear the house down. So that is where the invention of the capitol came from. And again, I mean, you know, there's, you know, the log home is like any other home. It is only, it's only limited by the amount of imagination that you have. Something also to be said. So log homes kind of lost their prestige there for a long time in the 1800s because it was a sign of poor people. You know, the immigrants came over, they built the log home, they lived there in the homestead in the, you know, in the 16 and 1700s. And then, you know, they wanted to have a more luxurious house with sawed or milled lumber. So, you know, we would take and have to, when we think about siding, you know, lap siding was have, you know, we had to cut this by hand. We couldn't just get out there and, you know, we didn't have a sawmill that could just do this. We had to do it by hand. So if we had a house that had sawed lumber in it, then we were further up on the totem pole. And so the timber frame, or the log home lost its glory there for a while in the 1800s. But then in the 1900s, Lincoln Log Home, I believe it was, I can't spell Lincoln for crap. Lincoln Log Home Company, they started doing what is known as a package deal. And so they made these very simple homes in a package, sold them to the customer with basic instructions, and the homeowner could build these little homes themselves and save a bunch of money. And this was about the 1920s, somewhere in that neighborhood, that this company started going on, and the rest is history. The log home package was sold, and so people could get out there and they could build these log homes and then tell everybody that they built it by hand. But really, it was these logs had been put together somewhere in a factory, and they had erected the log homes, labeled them, taken them down, packaged them up, send them to Fred over in Louisiana or wherever he was, and then he could erect these in his spare time on the weekends and have himself a log home. So, and then of course, as we wanted to get better and better and better and bigger and prettier, and that's the way it is today. So one of the companies that I work for today still does log homes. It's not really a package. That's pretty much typical house there. And these as well. This is Grandview Peaks. And we have a couple of models that we have. That's not a log home. And we offer two different types, actually there's several different sizes, but we offer the square log, and the round log. So you can get those in a half round or D-shaped. So this is what I mean by D-shaped, and it has it's got tongue and groove here. So you got a flat look on the inside, you have a log look on the outside, and then of course you can do the round log look, which is really not a round at all. It's a double D is basically what it is. And then the square log is pretty much like this. It has an indentation in here that you can go back and put chinking if you want to. Most of the time they don't. It's also a log on log system that's just screwed together. But that gives you an idea. That is the round log, or the D shape, one of the two there. That as well. I don't see the square log.
Which one's more common, the D shape?
No, I think we build more of the square log than we do the D shape. It just depends really. And the people that are building these are not local people. They're what do you call them? Halfbacks. They come from the north. They move down to Florida and move halfback. So they're not. Most of these people are not. They're not craftsmen at all. They're generally business people that has retired, and it's very, very common for us to build, a 3,000 square foot house for two people. Very common.
What a waste.
Yep. I mean, got the money, won't have flown it. So that gives you an idea of what kind of stuff that goes on in a log home. What's coming? So the 3D printed concrete home is on its way in. So basically this is a CNC router, which is, like the 3D printer that you can see, and it squirts out a little bit of concrete on here and it goes through a pattern. This is a double wall type thing. So you can throw your insulation in here, and this can be set up almost anywhere. So the contractors are just bring in these big machines that's run by our computer, and then hooked up to a, basically have a concrete truck comes in with and this has a pump that pumps concrete up into this little head here. This is basically a 3-axle CNC router, meaning that it will go up and down. This bar here will go X, and this can travel across through here Y, and your imagination is the only thing that limits you on what you want to build with this. You can put out a house in a day. Basically, you can put a shell out in a day, and they are really cool. This here is the legs are put on the inside of the structure, and then the concrete is laid into place. And so this is something, if you want to buy some stock in something, this might be a place to go. I don't know, I'm just guessing, but it seems to be very cool. And whether or not it takes off and flies or not, we shall see. But it could help with our housing problem, as to put out a lot of these houses in a very quick time. We set up a track, and so we do a house a day, and then go in, each day we move to the next one, and you could do a whole series of these in a production. The CNC goes in and lays this the first day. The next day, the guy comes in and puts insulation in it. The next day, the guy comes and puts a roof on it. The next day, put the windows in it. The next day, the guy comes in and does the finishes stuff. I mean, it's just crazy. It's stuff that you could do and do it in a production manner. So this is something that I'm kind of keeping my eye on. Not crazy about it. Don't know that I'd want one, but it's there anyway. So it's a cool concept for sure.
You know who the leader in that? You can go to YouTube. They don't have that many videos, but I watched several of them months and months ago when I was getting into this. Is Icon. So go to YouTube and type in Icon. They're the leader in this, and they really they got their own YouTube channel, but there's actually some 20 and 30-minute videos where the owners and inventors explain how they do that and how they came up with it, and then there's walkthroughs. I mean, it's really, I spent hours and hours watching all that stuff. It's really, no, that's not, I don't think that's it. Are you on YouTube, or did you just Google it?
I just Googled Icon build.
No, go to YouTube and Google Icon. Let's see, where's the regular? Yeah, Icon. Oh, yeah, that's the right site. Okay.
It was the right site.
That was the correct site, but I was referring to YouTube. You got about 7 videos. They're kind of short.
I'm gonna see if it just shows some pictures. There you go.
That's the prototype, I think. But
Yeah.
there's a 20 or 30-minute YouTube video, not on their channel, but separate, that shows how they designed it and engineered it and
Right.
how it had to meet all the specs. Yeah, I was
This
studying.
kind of it reminds me, looking at this little house here kind of reminds me of a post World War II house, where they just had to build them very quickly, and they were pretty much all the same. But this gives you definitely an idea for that. Okay, so time is up, unfortunately. We could just talk and talk and talk. So any questions whatsoever about anything that I've covered yet today? All right, so I'll get this put together, and on Wednesday we will continue with our basics of the home and talk about moisture. You all have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on Wednesday.
Right.
See ya.
Thank you.